So today, we're going to dive into a strategy that really flips the script on how we think about search, content, and even growth itself. We're going to move way beyond just optimizing for what exists and step into the world of foresight. This is the story of predictive keyword mapping, and it's basically a guide on how to rank for the future.
Okay, so picture this. Right now, at this very second, your competitors are all doing the exact same thing. Seriously, they're all huddled around the same dashboards, they're staring at the same metrics, pulling from the same old data tools. They're locked in this digital arms race, throwing money and people at a battle that honestly was probably decided years ago. And they think they're being super smart, you know? Data-driven. But the real truth is,
they're all competing for the past. They are fighting tooth and nail over the leftovers of demand that's already been found, already been categorized, and completely commoditized. It's a game you just can't win, played on a field that's way too crowded. And it's all because of this huge, shared blind spot that almost everyone has.
We call it the Rearview Mirror Illusion. It's this powerful, mistaken belief that the whole point of search is just to find and capture demand that's already out there. It's exactly like trying to drive a car forward, but you're only looking in the rearview mirror. Sure, you can see where you've been, but you have absolutely no clue where you're headed. This way of thinking is completely reactive, and it traps you in this endless cycle of playing catch-up, always just one step behind where people are actually going. So in this explainer, we're going to walk through 6 key ideas. We'll start by digging into that rearview mirror illusion. Then we'll talk about a new kind of player, the semantic visionaries. After that, we'll break down the machine they use, the anticipatory engine, and get into the psychology behind it all. Then we'll see how you can actually architect markets, and we'll wrap it all up with the big idea, marketing that pulls.
All right, let's jump in with section 1, the rearview mirror illusion, and this crisis it creates of constantly competing for yesterday.
For years, the rulebook for SEO was pretty simple, right? High search volume meant high value. But that whole equation has been totally flipped on its head. The internet's just too big now. Today, high volume actually equals high noise. It's a giant flashing sign that a keyword is a battlefield, just packed with established players who've had years to build up their authority. For anyone new trying to break in, it's not just hard. It's like trying to have a conversation in the middle of a hurricane.
And this leads us to the big problem we're all facing, something called semantic saturation. You see, with generative AI, the cost to create good enough content has basically dropped to zero. You can spin up 1,000 articles for any known keyword in an afternoon, and what you get is this massive flood of digital noise that just drowns out everything else. Those blue oceans of opportunity, they're getting polluted before we can even find them, which leaves us with a really serious question. How does a new idea ever get heard?
and this right here just perfectly nails the huge flaw in being purely data-driven. We've been trained to wait for the data, right? Wait for that keyword to pop up with some search volume before we make a move. But here's the tough pill to swallow. That data is a lagging indicator. It's a history book telling you about an opportunity that's already come and gone. By the time that keyword finally shows up in your fancy tool, the real visionaries are already there. The race is over. You're basically showing up to a party just as they're turning the lights on.
So if the old way is broken, what's the new way? Well, that leads us right into Section 2, the rise of semantic visionaries. This is all about a huge shift in thinking, from just passively tracking what's popular to actively shaping future intent.
Now, this didn't just happen out of the blue. It was an evolution, really born out of a crisis. Around the mid-2020s, the numbers were getting impossible to ignore. The return on investment for old-school keyword-chasing SEO was just cratering. This hit a breaking point with that semantic saturation we talked about. And then, someone had a breakthrough idea. In a world of infinite automated noise, the only real competitive advantage you have, the one you can't fake or buy, is lead time, being there first. And that single insight gave birth to a whole new discipline and a new kind of strategist, the semantic visionary. Now these visionaries, they weren't looking for keywords. Nope, they were hunting for something way more valuable, a linguistic vacuum. This is what happens when some big shift occurs, a new technology, a new problem, but we don't have the common words to talk about it yet. Think about it. Before we had words like doom scrolling or phishing, people were feeling that anxiety, but they couldn't name it. That gap, right there, that feeling of frustration before a problem has a name, that is the linguistic vacuum. And that is where brand new, uncontested demand is born. And finding these vacuums, it required a total shift in the entire goal of a content strategy. The old goal was simple: answer the questions people are already asking.
The new goal is to predict the pains they are about to feel. It's the difference between being a helpful librarian who can point you to the right book and being a trusted guide who warns you about the dangerous turn up ahead and tells you exactly how to get through it. You're moving from being reactive to being deeply, profoundly proactive.
Which brings us to Section 3, the Anticipatory Semantic Engine. This is the core mechanism, the how-to behind this foresight.
So this isn't some one-time thing. It's like a machine that's always running, a forecasting circuit. First up, stage 1 is disruptor identification. You've got to find the causal stone, that one single event that's shaking up your industry. A new tech, a new law, whatever. You have to look outside your own bubble. Stage 2 is friction forecasting. This is where you predict the ripples. Forget the event itself for a second and focus on the new problems it's going to create for people down the line. What new frustrations are going to pop up because of this change? Then, stage 3, linguistic engineering. This is where you brainstorm the awkward queries of the future. You know, the clumsy, emotional, full-sentence things a really frustrated person is going to type into Google before the official jargon even exists. This is all about empathy. And finally, stage 4, preemptive indexing. You publish the absolute best, most definitive guide to that very specific future problem. And you do it now, way before anyone else even knows it's a problem.
The engine runs on a process called causal chain mapping. And let's be clear, this isn't just spotting trends. This is a disciplined art. It's about tracing the downstream consequences of something. You start with that causal stone and you logically map out what has to happen next. It's about seeing the second, third, and fourth order effects of a change while everybody else is still just reacting to the first one.
Let's make this super concrete with an example. Okay, the causal stone, the big event, is a powerful new AI coding model gets released to the public. Millions of developers start using it. Now, the immediate effect is obvious: faster code. But a visionary looks for the secondary friction. The predictable problem is that all this auto-generated code, yeah, it works, but it might be messy, undocumented, and a nightmare to maintain. You get a massive increase in what developers call spaghetti code. So, what's the emergent vocabulary? Well, a frustrated manager who isn't a coder isn't going to search for AI-generated technical debt. No way. They're going to type their actual pain into the search bar. Why is my team's code suddenly impossible to read? Or maybe how to clean up auto-generated legacy code. That awkward, desperate question, that's your future goldmine keyword. That's your opening.
So, the big question is, how do you measure success when the search volume is 0 by design? This is where all the old metrics just completely fall apart. If you looked at search volume or keyword difficulty, they'd tell you this topic is worthless. They aren't just unhelpful, they're actually misleading you. They're blind to the future. So we need a new metric, the Semantic Lead Ratio. This measures the amount of time between when you publish your content and the day that query finally shows up in the standard SEO tools. This isn't a measure of traffic, it's a measure of pure foresight. It's the main KPI for this whole strategy.
So what's a good score? Well, the top-tier brands using this method are aiming for a semantic lead ratio of 180 days, 6 months. Just think about what that actually means. For half a year, your article is the only real authoritative answer for a problem that is slowly but surely growing under the surface. Then, when that wave of demand finally hits and the keywords start showing up in the data tools, your competitors will just be starting to scramble. But you won't just be on page 1. You will be the established definitive answer. You've basically built an information monopoly before a market was even recognized. That is the incredible power of lead time. Okay, on to section 4, the psychology of foresight. Let's talk about why this method works so well on a human level and how it rewires trust.
There are two really powerful cognitive levers at play here. The first one is called the availability heuristic. Basically, our brains are lazy. They're wired for efficiency. So when we run into a new, confusing problem, the very first clear solution we find becomes our mental benchmark for everything else. By being there first, you're not just giving an answer, you're setting the anchor for the entire conversation. The second lever is our need for closure. When your content gives a name to their pain, when it articulates their frustration even better than they could themselves, their brain gets this powerful rush of relief. That's the feeling of closure. You didn't just offer them a fix, you resolved their anxiety. You turned their confusion into clarity. So here's the bottom line. When you pull this off, you're doing something so much more profound than just ranking for a keyword. You are anchoring the truth. You become that trusted guide who saw what was coming, who understood the problem before it was even common knowledge. And in a world of endless noise and AI-generated fluff, we don't just want information, we crave
guidance. We instinctively trust the people who saw our future before we did.
All right, Section 5. Let's get practical. Architecting future markets, a framework for application. Here is your path, a simple 3-step process. Step 1, identify the causal stone. Look at your industry. What has fundamentally changed in the last 90 days? Is it a new regulation, a competitor's new product, a new AI model? Find that single point of disruption. Step 2, map the secondary friction. Ask yourself this: if this big change is a wild success, what new unintended headache does it create for my customer a year from now? Be specific. Don't think about the benefits, think about the new problems, new security risks, new confusing workflows, new training gaps. List them out. And step 3, engineer the emergent vocabulary. Now forget all your industry jargon. Imagine that frustrated customer sitting at their keyboard. What raw, unfiltered, maybe even dumb-sounding words will they use to describe this new pain? Why does my software keep crashing after the update? How to fix messy AI code. Write down 10 of these desperate human questions. Those are your new targets. That's your new content plan.
You see, when you start operating this way, you elevate your whole job. You stop being just a content creator trying to fill a calendar. You become a market architect. You are literally laying down the foundational language, defining the problems, and establishing the solutions for a market that doesn't even exist yet. It's a huge shift from just participating in a market to actually creating one. And that brings us right to our final insight. Section 6, marketing that pulls, not pushes. After all this talk about engines and psychology and frameworks, the simple human truth is this: sustainable growth, especially in a world this saturated, isn't just a straight line based on how much you spend or how much you produce. It's not about brute force. Growth is learned. It's the direct result of having a deep, empathetic understanding of where your market is headed and what your customers' future anxieties are going to be. It's about building a bridge of foresight over a giant canyon of noise.
And that's really the whole thing in a nutshell. Traditional marketing is all about pushing people through a funnel. This is totally different. This is about building a lighthouse. By anticipating a future need and building the definitive guide for it way ahead of time, you create this undeniable center of gravity. You don't have to push people anywhere. You just have to be the light that pulls them toward the value, the clarity, and the guidance they were so desperately searching for. You become a true partner in their journey, not just another company trying to sell them something. And in the long run, that is the only competitive advantage that really, truly matters.